Okay, we are recording. Okay, this is a special edition of Justin's Lighthouse Thursday night family group on Tuesday. We're going to be out of town, so we're just videotaping group this afternoon, which nobody wanted to sit on camera, but you'll be able to hear everybody's voices. We're talking about codependency, and I like what you were saying because those are the two different perspectives. There's like two ends of the spectrum when it comes to codependency. It's like one of them was, needing people to provide for us, take care of us, expecting that, and then the other side, which we might call the family side, is that need to take care of, always offering advice, unsolicited advice. And here's a good way to think of it. And so we all deal with codependency. I think most people do. It's just in the addiction dynamic, it's killing us. And because it involves our families, it keeps that vicious cycle going. And which is kind of ironic because the things that, like as a family member of an addict, the things we get frustrated about, we're also inadvertently enabling, hence the term enabler, but we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. Codependency is just this inner need to derive our self-worth, our esteem from an external source. And that doesn't mean, we can't go out and enjoy things and feel good about it. The problem is in codependency, we require it in order to feel okay. So when we're not people-pleasing and solving everybody else's problems and fixing this and fixing that, we feel less than. So, and yes, family members feel less than too. Codependency tends to be learned behavior. Its origins are also in childhood traumatic experiences. There's also can be a deep-rooted sense of inadequacy. I'm not enough. And so then, fast forward to adulthood. Now you've got your own family. And addicts do this too, and I'll get into this. So now my self-worth becomes derived from what I can accomplish for my children. So it's really, you could say vicariously living through your children. It's not exactly that. But this is why, it surfaces even when we're not around the other person. We don't have to be like in full rescue mode to be acting on our codependency. We can not even have talked to that person for 30 days, but we're thinking about it, right? There's just an ongoing thought process of, I wonder how they're doing. I wonder if they took care of this one little piece of business. I wonder if I need to do this. I wonder how that other little project is going. I wonder. And remember, it's too extreme. So it's not just like, oh, I'm just concerned about my kids, or I'm concerned about my loved one, or I'm concerned about my spouse, or whatever. It begins to take away from a person's own individuality. And that's really what codependency comes down to is even at our own sacrifice, we will do for others, even though we give up so much of ourselves. But that's the codependency. You have to understand is there's motives there. There's dysfunctional motives there, and we have confused it with love and concern, and doing things. Many of the things that we do is its own thing. When you give yourself away in order to make sure this other person succeeds, that's codependency. And as we're going to talk about today, it hasn't been working. We can, I'll self-disclose like I always do. My mom, I would go through a difficult period where I've lost everything, and now I'm going to start over again, and she's right there to prop me up. Got to get the car fixed, got to get the current on the rent or whatever. pay for the U-Haul, you know, blah, 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 pay for movers. Basically come in, do all the problem solving, not even make a single phone call. And then, you know, like in a rational circumstance, that could be a good thing. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion is. But with the addict brain, that just sets us up for failure. And I'm not saying, you know, families, we can't help our loved one. That's not at all what I'm saying. So maybe I should just go through the board and then it'll all make sense. But those are two really good descriptions, what you guys had earlier on what codependency is. It really comes down to needing some external thing to happen or to be engaged in or to be solved in order for me to feel okay. Like, you know, we were talking about perfectionism yesterday and that failure. We are scared to death that the other person, say our loved one, is going to fail. And so we will do everything for that person to prevent them failing. When what we need to do is we need to exert more boundaries and allow them to fail. And that's the scary part. And I'm a parent too. I got two girls, and I can't imagine, you know, having to follow some of this advice. But we know that we have to have boundaries. We have to learn boundaries, or nobody gets any better. Okay, so three points. Three points about codependency. There's so many different descriptions. You could Google a definition of codependency. This is a good one. Just deriving esteem from externals. It doesn't mean that we can't work on externals. We can't fix things, problem solve. The problem in codependency is our esteem is tied to it. Think about that for a minute. So if your esteem is tied to some external event or experience or accomplishment, then you're going to be in constant motion outside of yourself. It sounds like addict behavior. And it is. You know, there's the old expression, while the addict is running around chasing their drug of choice, the codependent people in our life are running around chasing us. You know, cleaning up our messes. And that's not healthy for either one of us. And here's the bottom line is it hasn't worked. Cleaning up our messes when we fail has not worked. And that's why what does work is, and that's the, you know, the really sucky part about this experience is, you know, so like by the time we get to this point, you know, our families are like, okay, we're drawing boundaries. Where, you know, no means no. Where no used to mean maybe, hang on, pressure me a little bit more, and then it'll become a yes. Now no means no, and it can take time. You know, that's why we talk about those phases of recovery. The first phase 1 and 2 of the recovery process is all about the addict resisting change, because we're really waiting for our families to come and rescue. You know, whether that is, you know, eventually my mom's going to get me a car. Eventually, you know, she'll come around. She said no before, you know, and so we resist until we finally reach that point in this process where it's like, oh man, it's serious this time. It's for real. And the awesome thing about that is we all have to experience that if we want change. And even though it's a very, very difficult experience, it is literally the thing that changes us. When our families finally say, well, no, it's not when our families say, it's when we finally recognize and accept it. Mama ain't coming. Dad ain't coming. My spouse isn't coming. My neighbor ain't coming. My best friend ain't coming. If I'm going to build this life for myself, I have to do the work. And then, you know, it doesn't mean we can't have help along the way. What it means is Mama's not going to do all the work anymore. Mama's not going to just set me in my new apartment with my car and here's the keys, and by the way, I've paid you up, you know, in advance 3 months just to give you a head start, and all that stuff that a rational, sane person, non-addict, would thrive in. Wow, what a great opportunity, and could really take advantage of that kind of opportunity. That's just not how it works in addiction. We see it as an expectation, and then we continue to repeat the same behavior over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And then our families continue to repeat that same behavior over and over and over. Clean up messes, chew us out, be upset, be heartbroken, but the behavior is the same. And so understanding codependency, we both have it. Our families have it to varying degrees. The addicts have it to varying degrees. Heck, look in your own relationships. You see it a lot in romantic relationships. Don't confuse codependency with enmeshment. That's two different things. A lot of people do that, and that's why I say that. A lot of people think codependency is enmeshment. It's all about self-worth. It's all about deriving esteem from external things. So I'll give you an example. Think about if you spend a lot of time around another human being, if they're in a bad mood, how do you feel? When someone else is upset, how do you feel? If you take on that other person's emotions, that's codependency. And of course, the reality is that's exactly what we do. Right? Because we need, I'll take mom. We need mom to be in a good mood today so that I can be in a good mood today. And so if mom is in a bad mood today, I think it's my fault. Right? That is also codependent behavior, codependent thinking. So if it's my fault, that means I've got to now somehow make her, cheer her up. I've got to people please. That's where people pleasing comes from. And on and on and on. You guys can relate it to your own story, but it's so important to recognize it's learned behavior. What I've just described, most of us have experienced that in childhood, right? And it seems normal. Well, yeah, if someone in the household is upset about something, we're supposed to be upset about it. That's not what's happening. We're literally losing our self-value. And it will not come back. It's not real in the first place. I can't feel safe and secure unless mom is in a good mood. And it gets a lot, it can get a lot deeper. We're personalizing. Mom's upset, it must be something I've done. That sense of inadequacy, just triggers one defect after another, after another, after another. So we'll stay on codependency today. So codependency is an excessive emotional, psychological reliance on a person, place, thing, or situation. It's looking to that external thing, that other person, or situation, experience, whatever it is, to give me value. That's where people-pleasing behavior comes from. So you may not, as addicts, or recovering addicts, you may not see yourself as an enabler, but you definitely can recognize the people-pleasing. And it becomes so ingrained in us, it's automatic. It doesn't mean there's not a genuineness there. Of course there's this genuine compassion to help others, to be able to connect, etc., etc. But like we've been talking about a lot the last week or two, we will also give that up if that emotional, psychological need is not being met. So even though in one circumstance it looks like we can be very helpful, and we derive esteem from that, which seems so normal, but it's not. Let's let that sink in for a minute. Helping others, accomplishing things is self-esteem building stuff. But when you have to do it in order to feel good, this is like we were talking about yesterday, in that perfectionism, we have to be doing 50 things a day or else we are nothing, right? We feel like we've done nothing, even though we still accomplished more than, say, an average person. But to us, it's never enough. It's never enough. It's never enough. So if I need an external experience to make me feel okay, worthy, acceptable, where does that leave you when you're not gaining some external thing? That's the shameful, shameless. It leaves me shameful, inadequate, not enough. And our solution to that is to shift to the complete other side of the spectrum. Well, now I've got to be more than enough. So tomorrow I've got to do more things. I've got to solve more problems. I've got to, and then like in codependency, like from a family perspective, it's not our own problems we're seeking to solve. Right? That's automatic. Right? If our enablers were even remotely as irresponsible as we have been, we wouldn't even survive as long as we have in our addiction. Right? So that's a given. Our family members who might deem themselves as the enabler are already in motion of taking care of their own personal responsibilities, but there's a hole. That's the person's own undealt with trauma. There's a hole. I've got to be accomplishing for this other person in order for me to feel okay. That's the codependency. It's not about accomplishing things is bad behavior. That's wonderful behavior. It's what we think about ourselves because of it. And so what we can do is we can inadvertently even create a crisis. Because in codependency, we come alive in a crisis. Codependents are master problem solvers. Okay, so let me just kind of finish these points. That was point number 1. Point number 2, codependency is obviously prevalent in families of addiction. And it's not just the enabler. Addicts are also suffering from codependency. We're always needing something else to derive esteem, because we have no identity, or we have an identity, but we haven't discovered it yet. So we look to external things to give us value. The third point is just a preoccupation with another. Our self-image being tied to the success of another. And we can go to great lengths, and we'll even do for the other person what they should do for themselves. And that, incidentally, is where the solution lies too. So moving forward, families might say, well, so how do we know? How are we supposed to move forward? And that it really comes down to that. Don't do for us, don't do for the recovering addict what we can do for ourselves. And that'll even make more sense when I get into some more details. So think about that. But remember, it's not just the behavior, it's going on in our thoughts too. It could be, we can spend an inordinate amount of time throughout our day thinking, well, I wonder if he needs a new pair of shoes. I wonder if he's got enough clean socks. I wonder if he's got, oh man, I wonder if he got that bill taken care of. There was that one little issue right before he went off the right. And we can, as an enabler, we can become consumed in problem solving for the addict. And that's centered in fear. I'm going to get to that here in a minute. So here's 8 characteristics, and we could do a whole 4-hour group on just all the characteristics, but this is a good sampling to help you recognize it in yourself. And it's both sides. It's there's like a enabling type characteristics, and then there's addict type characteristics. And the first one is just focusing on another person's needs at our own expense. Well, here's an example. Here's a really common example. I could go get myself in trouble, right? I'm not thinking about my mom, right? I get up, I go to school, I'm doing my thing, and now school's out, and I don't know what to do with time on my hands, so I go get in trouble, right? I get arrested, I wreck my car, I do whatever, and then my first call is to my mom, and now my mom, who is at work, will drop everything she's doing, right? Now she's compromising her relationship with her own employer. she's kind of compromising her own values, and she's got to rush to my rescue when what she should have done is let me sit in the back of a police car for 4 hours until she got off work. What she should have done is allow me to figure it out. Whatever the situation was. I mean, we could come up with all kinds of examples. I'm just using that as an example on how in our codependency we will do for another at our own expense. So that's where the boundaries come in. It's like, well, I'm really sorry, Miles, you've gotten yourself arrested at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I'm at work till 7. Now maybe when I get off work, I can do what I can, but in codependency, we drop everything instantly. It's a crisis. We're good in a crisis. We come alive in a crisis. It's a self-esteem boost, but it's not real. And that's why we're constantly needing a crisis or a problem to solve, which is why when we don't have a problem to solve, we will mull around, or like we were talking about yesterday, we will ruminate in our minds over and over and over all the different ways that we might have something that needs to be solved. Well, I wonder, and I just gave that example. Well, I wonder if he's got, any holes in his tennis shoes. I wonder if he's got enough underwear. I wonder if he's got all the right snacks that he likes. I wonder if he paid that bill. I wonder if, and we become preoccupied with another person's life. That's codependency. And of course, when it's a child or a sibling or a close family member, we think we're operating out of love and concern. But that's not really what's happening. It can be happening that way, but love and concern comes with boundaries. Love and concern comes with, well, you're an adult now, and I'm sorry that you got yourself arrested, but you're going to have some consequences. My mom she'd have the lawyer hired. She would have the bond made before I could even get put inside of a jail cell. And that only actually happened once. But there's my mom, just taking care of stuff. And what she should have done is she should have let me have those consequences. I'm not saying, obviously you're not going to let your kid go to prison for 5 years or even one day. I get that. But there's so many other subtle ways that we can begin to tighten up things here and there. And here's a good point. I would say at least, with the families that, they're dealing with Justin's Lighthouse right now, I would say you're already off to a good start. Right? That's what got us to this point. It's like, we already started tightening things up. But remember, the addict can have that expectation that it's just going to be temporary. Eventually, they're going to come around, and I'm just biding my time. I'm just, whatever. So the longer that runway stretches out, where our families are sticking to their guns, so to speak, the more we, as recovering addicts, begin to realize, oh, it's real. It is real this time. They're really not coming. They're really not coming. Whatever that looks like. I don't mean like literally pulling in and packing our bags, but I thought, man, when I got out of rehab, at least in the beginning of my rehab experience, I fully expected. It was kind of a relief because, just like everybody else, I was crashing and burning. I was losing my house. I already had to get rid of a car, and I was going to have this piece of junk car. I didn't know what I was going to do, basically. And so because it ended with such a crisis, phase 2, I really thought I was going to just begin again. And when I began again, that usually included my mom setting me up with a new place and a car, and I thought I was going to start that all over again. And when that didn't happen, of course, that was the difference maker. But it took me a while to finally really accept she's serious. She's done. I've pushed the envelope, and she's done being codependent. She just wants to be my mom. And once that happened, I began to grow up. And that's, of course, that's what we're resisting. And that's what the addict is resisting, is we're resisting. Our families are afraid of our failure, and we are afraid to grow up. And codependency is that dynamic that just keeps us in that vicious cycle. Vicious cycle, vicious cycle, vicious cycle. Thinking, for a family member, we think, man, if we can just keep loving them enough, no one has ever loved anyone into health. And we distort that. We're not really sure what that looks like. Remember, love is an action. And so when we start taking action in loving ways, then the addict has no choice but to grow up. Right? Even though we resist it in the beginning, and you guys know what I'm talking about. We resist it, we reject it, we kick and scream. It's like, I'm going to go down with the ship. But then eventually we go, oh, wow. Well, I can do some things. I know how to get a job, and I know how to pay bills, and I know how to. It's only now I'm going to have to develop the discipline to actually do it on a regular basis. And since I don't really have my family to fall back on, I think I'm going to start getting serious about it. And then we start growing. And that's literally how it happens. It sounds simple, but everybody knows it's, theoretically it's simple, but it's the process can be very challenging at times. Here's another characteristic of codependency. If you're uncomfortable when the attention is focused on you, right? We're externally minded, so we're the ones that want to. We were talking about this analogy not long ago. You're at the party, you go to the party or some gathering, and we're the ones that are in the kitchen, and we're cleaning the dishes, and we're helping with the barbecue, and we're going around keeping the trash picked up. We're going to stay busy, and it looks like we're being very helpful, which we are being helpful, but that's not what's driving that. What's driving that is this overwhelming fear to connect with humans. And so we're very good at giving attention, but when attention is focused on us, we're very uncomfortable. Think about the last time someone gave you an unsolicited gift or a compliment. Right? Hey, man, I love those shoes. Or, I was at the store and I thought about you and I got you this thing, and here it is. In our codependency, we are very uncomfortable with that kind of experience. Because remember, it's about value. It's about our value. And if you give me something that I cannot replace or I cannot exchange on an equal level, now I feel less than. It sounds so irrational. Right? Wait, someone thought of you enough to, they're at a store and they bought you this thing, and then they brought it to you and they took the time and then all this stuff, and then they give it to you. That should be an uplifting experience, right? Not in codependency. It's the way we see ourselves. It's the, oh God, well, I didn't get you anything, which diminishes the effort that the other person just made. Well, I didn't get you anything. Yeah, right. I'm giving you something. That's the dynamic. But in codependency, we are very uncomfortable with that. And so you might even go overboard, right? Oh, hey, man, I swear I'm going to get you something. And the other person isn't concerned about receiving. They were just giving. They were thinking of us. That should be an uplifting experience, and yet it's not. That's codependency. We have a long history of people-pleasing. That's remember, people pleasing. It doesn't mean we don't have a genuine heart and concern and care and love for others, but that has gotten distorted in our own deep-rooted sense of inadequacy, our inferiority, our immaturity, all that big I stuff. So the way we counter that is I just need to make sure everybody else is happy, has what they need. Remember the person in the house that's in a bad mood, right? So-and-so's in a bad mood, which makes me in a bad mood. Not in a bad mood, but makes me afraid. Right? So we've learned to people please. Well, I just got to make sure everybody's happy so that I can be happy. Or another way to think about that is, remember, we're talking, it's an emotional, psychological issue. So what drives our need to please people is this high need for emotional safety, security. So if I can just make sure everybody around me is good, hey, can I get you a refill? Hey, you want me to, hey, I noticed you like this and I'll cook this, and we're always people pleasing. Hey, let me help you with that. Because if we can ensure that everyone around us is good, then we feel emotionally safe. But if there can be one person in our whatever, in our environment, in our family, whatever, that for whatever reason, they're just having a bad day. They just got off the phone and it was a difficult phone call, or they're tired, they haven't eaten all day, or whatever, they're just cranky. In our codependency, we can't allow that to happen. We can't just let them be cranky. We personalize it. We start making a list in our mind. Oh my God, what have I done? Why are they so upset with me right now? Why are they... And then we might even take on the responsibility to fix it. Hey, I can get you some ice cream. Hey, I can... And which is, remember, there's nothing wrong with trying to be helpful. That's not what's driving us in our codependency. What's driving us in our codependency is until I can fix the other person, I don't feel safe, emotionally safe. Even though we are emotionally safe, this other person's bad mood has nothing to do with us. Codependency, we're personalizing it, right? It's an esteem issue. We feel best about ourselves when we are people pleasing or when we are helping others, but we end up neglecting ourselves, which means, think about this. If you're constantly seeking to do for others, and constantly might be a little dramatic, but there's an ongoing awareness of our surroundings and the people in our surroundings. And not necessarily in a good way, right? Because we're sizing ourselves up, we're measuring ourselves with those around us. We're seeking ways to do for others. Well, that sounds like a really good thing. But don't miss the other part of that, is that we neglect ourself in the process. So we don't do it with balance. We're not doing it to give of ourselves in sort of an altruistic sort of way. We're doing it to feel better. Because when we're left without it, our esteem is way down here. So we think it's an esteem boost, but that's an unhealthy esteem boost. That's not really how people derive self-esteem. We can even feel bad when we don't have a crisis to solve. Think about that. A lot of times that's where our restlessness comes from. We can become very restless and anxious, and even though nothing's happening, that's part of the problem. And that, especially from an addict in a family perspective, early recovery can be extremely difficult. Because even though we all recognize just the crazy insanity that we've come from, there was a familiarity to it. There was Miles is going to do good for a while, and we're so happy, and I hope it sticks this time. And then, oh God, he's starting to slip again, and then disaster comes, and the car gets repossessed, and he loses the job, and now he's passed out. We may have a couple of hospital trips, and blah 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 blah. And then we got to come in, and there's a financial rescue, there's an emotional rescue, can be a physical rescue, and then we just repeat the cycle, right? It's not the first time. So now all of a sudden, the recovery process begins, and the addict doesn't have all that crazy stuff to deal with, which can be very unfamiliar. And now the families, mom, she's sleeping through the night now. She's not panicking every time the doorbell rings late at night or there's a phone call after midnight. She just lets it ring and goes to bed and whatever. now in a safe zone, which can be extremely uncomfortable because we're used to a crisis. We crave that crisis. We need a problem to solve. We need a big problem to solve. And so it's not unusual. I've seen it a million times, not literally a million, but a lot, where our overwhelming need to have a problem to solve, we will inadvertently create one. And it can be as simple as like what I was talking about. You know, oh my God. I had a mom one time. I think I've told y'all the laundry detergent story, which is such a great story. But it's the same mom. She literally had calculated how long the guy's laundry detergent should have lasted. Right? Okay, so if he does a load of laundry each week and and how much she left so many ounces, and she had it all worked out in her mind. And so as he got closer to that deadline, that laundry detergent deadline, she started to panic. And so she's emailing me, and she can't get him on the phone, and why isn't he calling me, and he should be in trouble by now, and right, he should be in trouble by now. And I say that on purpose. In her mind, he was nearing a crisis of zero laundry detergent, which of course, you know, from a rational perspective, it's just not that big a deal. But when mom, who's used to having a crisis to solve, doesn't have one for 30, 60, 90 days, she will create one and not even recognize what she's doing. And I'm just using moms as an example, because that's my personal history. You know, my mom was very codependent, and I manipulated the heck out of it, and I'm getting to that. Okay, I'll go a little bit faster on these, but that's a big one, you know. And we'll do the same thing, you know. Remember that anhedonia, you know, our brains are suffering right now in early recovery, and normally pleasurable experiences can seem very bland, can seem very boring. So understand that. What we don't need to do is we don't need to create excitement for ourselves. We don't need to hop the fence and go tear up the neighborhood and go drink and all that stuff. What we need to do is learn how to be comfortable with what normal looks like. And of course, we don't know that yet. We're not even experiencing normal now because our brains are, you know, under or below average. So you know that. So you keep yourself busy. It's okay to keep yourself a little distracted. Well, maybe I'll watch a little bit more TV than I usually would watch. Maybe I might nap a little bit more than I would usually nap. Maybe I'm going to overwork myself with a project or two. That's fine right now. But keep it there. Just know, you know, when you're having those moments like, oh my God, there's nothing happening, I don't know what to do, I'm starting to blah, blah, blah. Don't create a crisis. That's not the solution. And our families can do the same thing. You know, oh my God, he should be out of laundry detergent by now. Oh my God, I only left 2 packs of cigarettes. You know, it's been 7 days. He's got to be going crazy. I got to get there now. I'm going to FedEx him. You know, our families can just be going crazy with stuff. Just like we are. And so that's so much of that codependent dynamic. You know, the point is just recognize it. Just understand it. Begin to understand it. Feeling alive in a crisis is a huge codependent characteristic. Codependence, especially with like enabler type codependency, master problem solvers. Master problem solvers. The addict, of course, takes advantage of that. But that's that. Shoot, I didn't put these in any kind of order. But if I had to put them in order of like value, that one, master problem solver, should be at the top of the list. Man, I mean, think about it. Our moms, oh my gosh, our moms can get stuff done. And we've grown accustomed, remember, so much of this is learned behavior. We've grown accustomed to letting them. So in this recovery process, when our moms, or whoever it is for you, says, yeah, I could handle that. I could handle it a whole lot quicker than whatever, my adult child, but I'm not going to. So if we want it, whatever that is, then we're going to have to first go through a period of doubting that, right? No, she'll come around. No, she'll come around. No, she'll come around. And the clock is ticking and time goes by, and then we kind of hit that stage where it's like, oh man, is she for real? And then we get bitter, and then we get resentful, and we think, man, this is bull crap. And then we finally come to acceptance. Sounds an awful lot like the stages of grief, doesn't it? Shock, denial, anger. But then we come to acceptance. And that's when we begin to grow. And of course, the hard thing for the addict is so I gotta really start taking care of myself in a very consistent way. And our master problem solver moms, or whoever, family members, have to work on standing on the sidelines and letting us do it. And you're gonna hear some, oh no, don't step over there, no, don't do that. But I'll cover this a little bit when we get deeper into the solution part of it. So recognize the two different fears. This is the solution. For our family members, they're scared to death we are going to fail. And remember, like we were talking about yesterday, how do you define failure? Well, failure, our families perhaps may define failure as we're just not doing anything. We're totally dependent on them for the rest of our lives. We're inconsistent in our work, in our employment. Sometimes we have a car, sometimes we don't. We're not really taking care of ourselves in a complete, consistent manner. And then eventually we're going to drink and drug and all that, and we just repeat the cycle. So that's a good definition of what it would mean to fail. The addict is scared to death to grow up, to accept those very responsibilities that we can do it, we know we can do it, and we've even done it for short periods of time. We just couldn't maintain them because, like what we were talking about at the AA meeting the other day, we don't know how to live sober. We only know how to live in short little increments, and then boom, and then rescue, and then boom, and then rescue, and then, So what if both of us could just step back, our family members could just step back and say, you know what, I'm gonna allow you to fail. What happens isn't what we're afraid of. What families are afraid of is well, if I really give them room to fail, then they're going to end up homeless. They're going to end up in the back, living behind some warehouse, and then they may even die. Okay, yeah, that is possible. That could happen. But what tends to happen, I'm going to say 98% of the time, is just like I was describing. There's a lot of resistance, but we always arrive at that acceptance. And then what happens is we start to fly. So that's why I always say, you got to give us room to fail, because that's how we end up succeeding. That fear doesn't actually come to fruition. I mean, it's possible. I've seen it. We've seen it in people that we know. You may even gotten really close to it on your own. Right before, oh gosh, the sheriff came and the eviction notice and all this stuff, and then mom showed up on day whatever, the last day with the U-Haul, and oh God, okay, I'm going to stay on her sofa. We've talked about that. The only reason that perhaps we've never experienced homelessness isn't because of our moves. It's only because we've had family members that just wouldn't allow it. And that's a good thing. We've got people that love us enough, they would never allow us to be homeless. Someone's always had a sofa for us to sleep on. Someone's always had a back room, or an RV parked in the back, or whatever it was. But don't think for a minute that we've never been homeless because of our acumen. No, it's because our families haven't allowed it. Well, what if now they were willing? It's like Abraham. The dude didn't want to kill his kid, but he was willing to go that far and just trust the process. If our families could step back now and go, man, I do not want you to be homeless, but I'm going to let you take a crack at it. Right? Let's see what you do with it. Well, in the beginning, we'll reject it. We'll deny it. We'll not believe it. No, she's not serious. She's not serious. They're not serious, whatever the situation is. But the closer we get to the realization that it's for real, is the closer we get to making that turn into adulthood. Right? The reality is it'll never happen because we will finally rise to the challenge. And that's what keeps us sober. Just let that sink in for a minute. We don't have a drinking problem. We have a thinking problem. What keeps us sober long term is that acceptance of personal responsibility. But we don't know how. That's what we're learning now. I don't know what that means. And so codependency is that dynamic that can keep us both stuck. Remember, we're not talking about conquering the world and all that perfectionism. That's why, you guys are already in that process of that. That's why just getting up every day and making your bed, regardless of how you feel, is working out stuff in you that you can't even imagine right now. And then brushing your teeth about the same time every day, and eating breakfast about the same time every day, and doing that on a consistent basis, not on a perfect basis. You're already doing it. But remember, it's learned behavior, so in the back of our minds, we're still kind of thinking, mom's going to show up with some golden nuggets. I don't really have to think too much about my future because, I can always go to work for, my mom's dad's business, or I can always go, there's some fantasy opportunity in the future. The more we take on responsibility for ourselves on a daily basis, the more realistic our thinking becomes. And then all this stuff goes away, even if our families never grow past their codependency. Of course, we've talked about that a lot. That's amazing. Okay, here's last two characteristics on the board today. 7 is extremely competent on the outside, but can feel very hollow on the inside. And I think I already even mentioned that. And then the last one, difficulty with boundaries. Boundaries is just that having that experience with us, the addict or the recovering addict, where you want to say no, I just don't know about that, but it always kind of moves into yes. Or you might even say, okay, yes, this is the last time, but then we say yes again. And we say yes again, and we say yes again. Understand what that is. It's our fear, from a family perspective, it's our fear that the addict is going to fail. I've heard so many stories. Shoot, I grew up with friends like this where they were like normal. And, we all, everyone's, grew up with some kid whose family had a lot of money and, they just had it made, seemed to have had it made. They get out of high school, they could pick any college they want because they're not relying on scholarships or funding or any kind of thing. And then they go to work at the dad's business, and then just everything seems to be handed to them. And you just think, man, what an easy life. But what I never understood about that is they did well in that because they didn't think like I think. And so they actually accepted the responsibility of those opportunities, right? Just when just because you give a guy a job doesn't mean he keeps it. right? Just because you give a guy an apartment or a house or whatever doesn't mean he keeps it. And that's where we have not so much screwed up, but that's where we require development. Because if you give me a car, I don't know how to keep it. Think about that. I don't know how to be so diligent and consistent in my employment that I can continue to consistently pay the insurance, save money for repairs when things go wrong. Give me a car, and in about 12 months, it's probably going to be sitting in the driveway because it's completely broken down and I don't have the money to fix it, right? And like, in my addiction. Not even in my addiction, in my early 20s, before I had really even developed a hardcore addiction. Because it's not about drinking and using. It's about a behavioral thing where parts of our brain are, completely distorted in the way we see the world. It's emotional, it's psychological. So it's all about what we do with what's in front of us. And like we were talking about yesterday, the addict doesn't want what's in front of them. The addict wants 10 steps behind it. This is cool and all, but I want that over there. When can I have that? I need that now. I want that right now. No. November 5th, right? November 5th, 4:17 in the afternoon, 2022. I need to know exactly what's going to happen on that day. And if I could just understand that, then I'll be good. Codependency. It keeps us twisted and sick. Okay, so let me just kind of get into let's just get into the solution. And there's only 3 points on the solution. This may be hard to hear, but it's tough. But it is the solution. Recognize it. That's so much of the solution to all this stuff we talk about. Unless you recognize the codependency in yourself, then obviously you won't seek to change it at all. So know what that looks like. And I've got a couple of examples that are kind of, there's going to be tangible things, and there's also going to be intangible things. And those intangible things, kind of the little subtle ways that we kind of exert some codependency and don't even recognize how it hurts us. We can become very frustrated from a family perspective, right? We get very frustrated with, say, our adult child's lack of responsibility, but then continue to take on responsibility for the same person, and then just be frustrated and confused, and I just don't understand, and why are we always having to make these phone calls for you, and why are we always having to clean up this mess, and why are we always having to take care of this other stuff? Because we continue to do it, right? We're so afraid that the addict is going to fail that we won't give enough runway for them to fail or succeed. It's like, I need you to handle this, you need to take care of this business right now, and oh my God, it's 24 hours later and you haven't done it yet? All right, fine, just give it to me. And that's actually one of the examples. Here's a conversation. Hey son, have you taken care of your taxes this year? And of course the addict's going to say no. Oh, well, bring them to me and I'll do it. And of course then the addict is like, awesome, that's what I've been waiting on. Why should I take care of my little responsibilities if I know in the end, if I just let it ride out long enough, my family will swoop in and take care of it for me? Well, the answer is I shouldn't, right? It's an expectation. Remember, we're dealing with an overwhelming fear of failure on one end, and the other one is an overwhelming fear of growing up. So the solution to move through this within the family dynamic is everybody step back and allow it to either happen or fail. Because what ultimately happens is we don't fail, we succeed. But we have to go through that process. You know, we were talking yesterday, you know, well, what if we do fail? What if, and I've seen this, I use this example because I've seen it over and over and over, year after year after year after year after year. You know, we'll get some frantic email or some frantic call and be like, oh my God, you know, I've got to talk to so-and-so and, you know, we've got to get this done and you know, we're meeting with the accountant at 5 o'clock today and it's already 3 o'clock and I've got to get all of his paperwork because we're taking care of his taxes. Whoa, what? You're doing what? Well, yeah, we've got to take care of his taxes so he can get his refund. Why? Well, so he can get his refund. No, that's his job. It's his refund. Why isn't he doing that? Oh, well, no, but because he's in rehab. Not the entire year he hasn't been. Well, I know, but he's been in his addiction. Here's the thing. The addict has to be allowed to suffer the wreckage of the past. Right? It's those consequences that change us. The IRS ain't going nowhere. Right? You can file your taxes. You can get an extension. You can file your taxes. You can get a refund anytime. But that codependency is like, oh my God, it's a crisis. It's an emergency. It must happen now. It's okay that my adult child hasn't done it because I'll do it. And those are the kinds of things, and I get it. I'm not saying that everything should be off the table. All I'm saying is these are the types of things that we got to start looking at, recognizing these are the very things that we do as families that rob the addict of growing up. And I know it probably sounds pretty harsh. And I'll tell you, the day my grandfather said, son, I got to part company with you. You just caused me too much trouble. And the day my mom said, I'm out. We'll pay for rehab, but that's it. I was mad. I was words that I'm just not going to use right now. And I also came around, right? Because then it's like, who cares? We're mad, we're upset. But you said, that's how we grow up. But here's the thing. Our families are so afraid we're going to fail, as if they're the only ones that can make it happen. Remember, it's not really about the thing that we say it's about. It's about, I need this problem to solve so I can feel alive. So as family members, what we really need to do is we need to encourage the recovering addict to use their resources. You know, everybody remembers the story of the laundry detergent. It doesn't mean that the taxes aren't important. It doesn't mean that, you know, staying in touch with the lawyer, whatever life is happening, and we still got things. And we weren't concerned about taxes 6 months ago, and now all of a sudden it's the most important thing in the world. You know, it's like if you haven't accepted this fact yet, the addict, alcoholic is dying, right? We're in a process of dying, but remember, it's not about the actual thing. We're in the process of dying, and all of a sudden, you know, an $800 tax return or refund is the most important thing in the world. You know, I know it sounds insane. It is. That's the insanity of the codependent cycle. So it doesn't mean that these aren't important things to do. It means give the addict enough runway and space to understand what their own resources are and ask for help from a different set of people and go about solving problems in different ways besides, here Mom, here's my latest problem. You know, here Dad, could you take care of this? Here Grandpa, could you cut this check? Here, could you? And that's hard. And it starts with, you know what? Just having to ask for help for a pack of cigarettes or something. You know, oh, you had a laundry detergent? Our first reaction is, I gotta call Mom. Think about the conditioning of that, you know, just like as a recovering addict. Think about the conditioning of that. I got a problem. I've got an emotional issue. Oh, I gotta call Mom. Oh, I gotta call Mom. Oh, I gotta call Mom. Oh, I gotta call Mama. No. We gotta start calling each other. And that's how the addict grows. That's how the addict begins to mature. But the hardest thing I think that the families will ever do is to be able to allow that process to happen. It seems like a control issue. From an addict's perspective, it might feel like a control issue. It's not about control. Oh, my family, they just have to have control of everything. No, that's not what's happening. In codependency, it's an esteem boost. I need a crisis because something is missing in their own internal stuff. There's a hollowness, right? Probably grew up in a family where there was a lot of codependency, and so we latch on to the things that we can control, the external things. So here we are stuck in this dynamic. But here's an example of intangible codependency, like the stuff that's not real obvious, but you may recognize this in yourself. It may be just thinking of a continual stream of questions to ask regarding well-being. It's like you'd be in the middle of your day and whatever, you're on a break and you're thinking, or you're daydreaming, or you're driving, and your thoughts aren't on golf. They're not on, what you're going to eat for dinner tonight. They're on solving a problem for the addict. And so we can come up with like this continual stream of questioning. Well, I wonder if he's got enough underwear. I wonder if he needs a new pair of shoes. I saw some shoelaces on sale last week. And it's just ongoing thought process of, I gotta make sure the addict has everything they need. It's not really about the addict. It's not about the other person. This is an internal deficiency within the person with codependency. Doesn't mean those things aren't important. That's not rational. Because we're not talking about a 4-year-old child. Think about this for a minute. We're not talking about a 7-year-old child. We're talking about our adult children. And I'm wondering if he's got enough underwear. That's codependency. I wonder if he took care of his taxes. I wonder if he, whatever, go down the list. Maybe not. But if those are important to the addict, then they need space to ask other people for help. Hey, I got this thing. Can I get on the computer? I need to check on my taxes. I need to look at this one thing. Oh, by the way, next time we go to Walmart, can we get some underwear? What's amazing is of course I see that all the time. Guys in the group do begin to problem solve within themselves, start asking for help, and hey, what should I do about this? What should I do about that? And so when our families, and they're doing their codependency thing, discover, well, wait a minute, what do you mean? He already solved that problem? Wait, well, I left him there with only 2 pair of underwear. You're saying he's got 15 pair of underwear now? How did that happen? That's the codependency. So our families can also go through this 5 stages of grief. They can go through a shock phase. Like, oh my God, what? They actually solved a problem? Yeah, that's the point, is if we're left some space, we typically fly. But our families are so afraid we're going to fail that they won't allow that space. Just think about that for a minute. So that's the solution. That's how both of us begin to grow. Allow there to be space enough, or what I like to think of as a runway. Let the addict have their runway or rope, right? And even though we might fail, we might just totally, go belly up. That rarely happens. What usually happens is even though we might resist it for a little bit, because we're waiting for you to change your mind. We're waiting for our families to go, okay, all right, we're going to come in and fix everything. So we need that process to play out before our minds will register, oh man, it's for real this time. I actually have to do this thing. And then we fly. Wow, it's amazing. But it's hard. I know everybody knows that it's hard. We've all been through it. What I would recommend for families is when you're dealing with those moments where you're finding yourself lost in problem solving for the addict, the adult child who's not even in your presence. I wonder if he's got enough underwear. I wonder if does he have no snakes? Do they even let him have snacks there? Are they allowed to smoke whenever they want, or do they only get one cigarette a day? That's all codependency. Trying to break down the life. Let me rephrase that. We're trying to break down the comfort level of the adult child. Just let that sink in for a minute. As families, we are so scared to death that our adult family member is going to feel uncomfortable. And so we can you can run with that forever. We can come with all kinds of things. Oh my God, did they ever get the air fixed? Do they even turn the air conditioning on? What's it like at night in this heat? Are they okay? Do they need an extra pillow? On and on and on and on and on. When you find yourself having those little experiences, that's when you got to hit the pause button. Family members, hit the pause button and go inward with it. What am I neglecting with myself? What does this remind me of? What is missing with me? This is an opportunity for our families to grow too. But you have to take your eyes off of the addict and quit trying to, change the world. And of course I know, obviously I'm using dramatic examples. But it's there. And start putting our eyes on a place where we are afraid to look, and that's self. What's going on with me? This is my time to heal. And we can do that even if our adult child doesn't heal. We say the same thing. Even if our families aren't healing, we can heal. We can each have a new life. But what actually happens is all these fears, they never come true. What actually happens is our families grow and they learn boundaries and they end up healing some of their old junk, and addicts start stepping up and we start growing and taking responsibility and asking for help, and all of a sudden everything just comes together. That's why I say all the time, recovery is not rocket science, but we got to be looking at what the real problems are, and it's not drinking and using. Drinking and using was our solution. That was the result. So now we got to be in this process. Well, I pretty much already said that. So here's the rule of thumb, and we'll leave it at this. The rule of thumb for actually for all of us, the rule of thumb is don't do for the other person what they can do for themselves. Okay, and that comes with like a built-in, measuring rod, because that will change. So let's say like right now, if they're, if the person has some unfinished business, maybe there's some sort of paperwork that still needs to take place with HR at an old job, or maybe it's a tax issue, or maybe it's a lease issue, or maybe there's some unfinished business out there that needs to be tackled. Leave it alone. Well, what do you mean leave it alone? If I don't do it, then the addict won't. No, the addict can do it. Now, if they're not aware of it, remember, do for us what we can't do, but don't do for us what we can do. So if we're not aware of it, absolutely let us know. But then let it play out. Well, what if they don't take care of the business? What if they don't? What if? Then they don't get that last paycheck, or they don't get that tax return, or they have a broken lease on their credit report. It's called consequences. In our codependency, we swoon in and we take away consequences. Start letting us have consequences, and you will see a guy grow big time. Right? Unless you're a narcissist, which we don't have any narcissists. It's all there. I mean, we're just like waiting to fly. But as long as we know we've got someone else and a long history of someone else absorbing the majority of our consequences, I don't really need to do anything. I don't have to keep up with my own business. Right? I don't have to think about, oh gosh, I got to call HR, and oh man, I need to take care of that thing, and I need to get my W-2s sent to me. I don't have to think of that stuff because my mom will. She takes care of all that stuff. I used to say that. My mom was actually an accountant. And so she literally did always take care of that stuff. And when I got into recovery, I recognized how much that was hurting me. And so I started doing it. I quit using my mom as my tax person. And it was hard. I actually had to go talk to people and had to interview people and had to like pay money and had to work to have money to pay for the tax preparer, and oh my God, I had to start doing normal stuff. But it helps to grow us up. It was so much easier to say, oh, my mom, she's an accountant, she handles all my stuff like I'm special. Oh, she handles all my financial affairs. No, she does my taxes because I literally don't know how. So think about that. Don't do for us what we can do for ourselves. So the more we can, let go. If we can't, it's okay, step in. But man, if it's stuff like phone calls and taking care of stuff on the internet and email stuff, don't do that stuff for us. You can make us aware that it needs to be done, but don't do that stuff. And don't listen to our excuses when we say, oh, but there's never any internet, or we don't ever get any computer time, or that's all bull. Let us have responsibility and we will rise up. We always do. I mean, I see it in my own life. I've seen it for 20 years, over and over and over and over again. I'm going to see it with you guys already. Right? Y'all talk about that. Just real quickly. When you recognize that you're like making an extra effort to take some of that personal responsibility, does your life get better or does it get worse? Even just, right now it's just little stuff.
Yeah, it gets better.
And so what is that? What is better? Your esteem, your outlook.
Just feel more capable of handling things.
Wow.
Like I never thought I could do any of the stuff I've done here. Or like with the mower and the hot water heater.
Just all the repairs and stuff.
That's out of my realm. But we did, we got it done. It really wasn't that complicated.
Man, that's really powerful. I want everybody to think about that. It makes me feel capable. And that really, I don't know if I got that expressed in this presentation, but codependency, or our family's codependency can actually put us in a position, inadvertently, I'm not saying it's our family's fault, but it can cause us to actually feel like we're not capable. That's crazy. Well, so anyway, that was really powerful, and you can relate to that because I saw you nodding. Like, yeah, you could really relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, if you do something for yourself, then it makes you feel good. Because you've accomplished something.
Yeah. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it's not. If it was that simple, we could have already been in it. But,
I know what you mean. People are always, asking people for money or whatever.
Yeah.
After a while, I mean, it kind of makes you feel bad. Like, man, I can't pay my rent.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I can't pay my rent. I'm not capable.
Yeah.
I can't live out here. I can't really have a normal life. I can't pay my rent. I can't keep up with my car payment. I can't put gas in my car. Yeah, so that's the whole point is it devalues, or the experience devalues us. So we lose our self-esteem. It's no wonder that we drink and use, because we have low self-esteem. You know, this, I mean, we if people still aren't understanding it, you know, so much more of this stuff comes out when we talk about trauma. But if you know, starting in childhood, we learn that, you know, at the end of the day, I don't really have to take care of all my responsibilities, because even though it might come with a little yelling and screaming, mom will always step in and take care of it, kind of thing. Mom will always get me off the hook. Mom will, you know, and remember, I'm just using mom, that was my example. It could be anybody in the family. But it, as we grow older, it decreases our self-image. And, you know, and then what you guys are talking about. So here we are as grown men that deep down inside we don't really feel capable. Even though, of course, our families are like, oh my God, you're very capable. Yeah, that's true, but we don't feel capable. We're not really sure we can do this thing. You know, I've heard you say that many times. You know, just that discouragement. You just get to that point after failure after failure after failure. I'm just not really sure I can live in this world. I just don't know how. So, you know, for families, recognize the benefit of allowing us to do it, even though it might take a little bit longer. It might not happen the way you want it to happen. It might come with a little bit of setback, followed by, you know, a catapulting forward. The process might not play out the way it would if our families just stepped in and took care of business. But what's happening is this adult person is becoming whole. You know, and it's, you know, you're talking about repairs, and yeah, it's weird. We've had more stuff break. It's like a God thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to work some stuff out in Blake with these repairs, and so as soon as Blake arrives, I'm just going to let all this stuff break apart. But it's not even about, you know, it's cool. Those are nice skills. Okay, so I can hook up a hot water tank. I can do but it's so much deeper than that. The benefit is so much deeper than that. Just like you described, it develops this belief in ourselves that I can do it, even though, you know, 6 months ago I didn't think I could do diddly. And now I can see I can problem solve. I can have a problem, and I don't have to have all the answers, and I don't have to call mom for the rescue. I can ask for help. I can use my resources. I can try it, fail at it, learn, keep trying. That's what's missing. You know, that's what's missing for us. We need the runway, and I guarantee you we will fly. Did you want to share something? Man, I wish you were on camera, because I was going to send your mom a picture, but I haven't done it yet. We'll let it be a surprise.
Yeah, that'll probably look better.
We'll let it be a surprise. Anyway,
I just kind of got finished taking my notes.
Cool.
So.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Speaking of projects, I know we got a lot of stuff we got to do. So, thanks for working with us, people. We're gonna post this on Facebook. We're gonna post it on YouTube, and we're hopefully in the next few weeks it's gonna be a lot slicker. You're gonna be able to see what's on the board on the screen in like a PowerPoint form. So we get so many people asking about that, and we're real close to having that together. So anyway, we'll see you guys later. Thank you. If if our engineer could just hit stop record.